Alright, hello you crazy people out there, this is DragoniteSpam, and remember this thing? It's the first Game Maker tutorial I ever made. I'm going to be recycling it here for a completely different purpose, and that is going to be discussing these things called macros. You may have heard of them. They were known as constants in previous versions of Game Maker before Studio, but now they're known as macros and their functionality has been expanded a little bit. Anyhow, I am going to be going into the player object here. Fairly arbitrary choice. I'm going to be going into the step event. Open up, thank you very much. And you see here where I have an image angle equals 180 for left and 0 for right and 270 for down and 90 for up. Oh, cool, I got them all right this time on the first try without like stuttering up. But what if you don't want to have to remember these values constantly? What if you want to just be able to say, perhaps, what is A? A is going to be left, and D is going to be right, and S is going to be down, and W is going to be up. What if you didn't want to have to remember those number values in your head? You could define up here in local variables, or maybe if you wanted to be able to access them from any part of the program, you could define them as global variables in, say, the room creation code or whatever it happens to be. I'm going to get out of there. Or you could actually get these highlighted like you would with a one of the built-in variables. So whether that be like sprite, if I can spell that, index, or true, or false, or pi, or one of those. E, the natural constant logarithm number is not one of them. Anyhow, this is where we get into the macros, and they have several benefits. For one, obviously I said a minute ago that if you were to create a value in here, say left being 180, 1, yes, I would like to save changes to macros. It's going to be color-coded, so you can easily pick it out. You can see if you misspelled it because it won't be color-coded. If you're reading through your code a month later, or if you send it to somebody else to read through, they'll be able to more quickly go through and see what you're doing than having to actually read the numbers and figure out what they mean. They could say when you hit A, you turn left, and it's as simple as that. I'm going to go through and define the rest of these. Give me a moment. There we go. And if I were to pretty much reset this window of code, you can see that they're all color-coded now. The other benefit to using macros is that you can't have the values change. So I'm going to run the game now, and it's going to do exactly the same thing that it did before. Come on, run. Did I? Oh, I didn't. It didn't actually start compiling. Faster than that, please. Thank you very much. You can see when I hit the appropriate arrow keys, it turns the right direction. When I go up to you and hit space, you behave as you're supposed to. But as I was saying, these values are constant, as their name in previous versions of Game Maker would imply. If you try to redefine one of the values here, so maybe you want left to turn into like 5 or something odd like that. If you were to run the game, it doesn't highlight it with like error checking, syntax error checking, unfortunately, but when it does compile, it will tell you that you tried to redefine a constant somewhere and that it does not approve of that. So you can't accidentally change these values. Maybe you meant to type something else and you ended up, maybe you wanted to type like, I don't know, maybe you wanted to type something like that and assign it a value, and you accidentally like typed it left. And if you didn't have that constant error checking, that could be an error that's fairly hard to pick out, because it most likely wouldn't throw an error, it would just make the game behave funny. Now the other fancy thing that you can do with constants that as far as I know you couldn't do in Game Maker 8.1 is use them to define functions. I should reword that. You could, I'm whacking my finger on my desk and I don't know why. You could define a constant's value to be a function in Game Maker 8.1 and previous versions as far as I know, except those values would be evaluated at compile time. And if you said, I don't know, something equals random range from, I don't know, 0 to 10, right when the game started up, it would pick out a random value between 0 and 10 inclusive, and the constant of something would have that same value for the entire game. But here, I'm going to change this to 0 to 359 real quick because I'm going to be using this for a degree. Here, yes, I would like to save changes. I don't know why it prompts you to save changes when you click OK, because that usually means that you're happy with your work. Anyway, I am going to go into the NPC object, and I'm going to go into the space, and I'm going to say, instead of changing image angle to point towards the player, I'm going to say image angle equals You know what? I'm going to rename something because that word doesn't happen to be particularly helpful. I'm going to rename this, how about angle? Yeah, that sounds better. Yes, I would like to save my work. So we're going to say image angle is going to equal angle, and that's going to be a random value that's going to be generated every time angle is called for. So pretty much every time you hit the spacebar, you can see it's randomly turning in random directions, and it's all good. It's being evaluated pretty much on the fly. Anyway, I am going to undo that because that is not a particularly useful line of code to have, and I think it would be more appropriate to have the NPC turn towards the player. Anyway, for things like this, it can save a little bit of typing to say perhaps angle instead of random range 0 to 359. But in more complicated sections of code, maybe you wanted to have a constant called time, and that would generate a string with, I don't know, the minute. And that would generate a string with, say, the current minute and the current second for the current time. And yes, I would like to do that. You could, God, I'm losing my train of thought. You could, just to illustrate that, I'm going to go into the section of code where, if I can read it properly, the text is drawn on the screen, and you're going to have the current time. And that string with the minute and the second will automatically be there when you talk to the NPC, rather than you having to do something like manually typing out string current second and string current minute and whatever every time, and that'll save quite a bit of time. You could achieve more or less the same effect by creating, say, a function and calling it like get time or something like that, and you could have it return whatever this line of code is, and it wouldn't be all that much more typing. But personally, I think it's neater to have. I'm gonna get rid of this. Personally, I think it's neater to have the constant value, because it's less space for the parentheses and stuff, but other people may disagree on that. Nonetheless, that is macros in GameMaker Studio. They pretty much work the same way in 8.1, except for the bit where functions are evaluated in real time. But nonetheless, I hope you found that useful. Rate, comment, and subscribe. Watch some of the stuff I have uploaded, and I will see you all later.